Hey everyone, welcome to episode 16 of my Baldur's Gate 3 report cards. Today we're going to cover invisibility and see invisibility. After the video, you can vote on what tier you think the spell should be in the polls in the description. Let's get started with invisibility. Invisibility. Touch a creature to turn it invisible. Attacks against it have disadvantage, it attacks with advantage. Invisibility ends early if the invisible entity attacks, casts another spell, interacts with an object, takes an action or bonus action, or is damaged. Condition ends early if the creature attacks or casts a spell. This is mostly true. There are some actions and interactions you can do that won't break the condition. This costs an action, spell slot, and your concentration to cast. It can only be cast within melee range. For upcasting, you can target an additional creature for each spell slot. This is learned by bards, sorcerers, warlocks, wizards, land druids, arcane tricksters, and eldritch knights. So invisibility makes you invisible. This is a really nice effect for exploration. It lets you sneak past encounters or enter forbidden areas. You do need to be careful not to break the invisibility accidentally, taking any damage from the environment or other sources. Using most actions or taking objects out of containers will do it. I know I've tried to use invisibility to steal things before, and it hasn't always ended peacefully. Out of combat exploration is nice, but it's often not worth the spell slot. Invisibility does have some nice combat uses as well, though. For one, it can be used as an emergency escape. If you're in danger, turn yourself invisible and run away. You do need to make sure that you're not near where you turned invisible originally, because enemies will try to find you, but if you move away, you'll be safe. If enemies can't find anyone in combat at all, they'll often just drop aggro completely, and you can get a reset off in emergency cases. The other big combat use is for surprise rounds. Usually, you can get surprise rounds for much cheaper, or even nothing, by just positioning correctly, but invisibility is a very reliable and easy way to make it work. Make your character invisible, and then hit them from within their line of sight, and you've got a near guaranteed surprise round. Invisibility also has the benefit of working on allies. If your ally has no actions left, but they're in danger, you can make them invisible. It is, of course, a melee range spell, so you'd be putting your caster in danger, but it is an option. This can also work for other uses like exploring, giving it to a weak temporary companion to keep them safe, or giving it to your martial characters so they can get the surprise attack in. The big issue with the spell, though, is that the invisibility effect is available in many cheaper forms. Potions of invisibility don't use a spell slot, and they're better in combat because they cost a bonus action or can be thrown for range in an area of effect. Just the way I play the game, I don't really use potions in combat, but I think that's a fairly unique thing to me. And even with that in mind, there are also 2 rings that you can use, one that you get as early as the Grimforge, that do give you a free use of invisibility. Dwergar even get it as a cantrip at level 5. And they do really show why the invisibility condition is so strong. They're one of the strongest races in the game because they can do so much with the free invisibility, but the difference between free and any cost is huge. And the spell invisibility is not free. And now would be a good time to clarify that when I rate spells, I'm rating them as if you're using a character to cast it with a spell slot, a party member, not from an item or scroll or campcaster. So even though the effect of invisibility is strong, as we get into the grades, they're going to be fairly middling. I've given this a D for base level early game, getting better as the game goes on, but not by much. Invisibility is another spell that I rarely cast. I don't like spending my spell slots on this, but I do have it prepped sometimes as an emergency button. I think it gets mildly better as the game progresses because your level 2 spell slot is less valuable compared to the higher level ones. Upcasting I've given an F. It's pretty rare that you would want to make multiple characters invisible, and as you do upcast, you're using much more important resources, but typically you only need to make one character invisible to get the job done, like to get a surprise round. The next section is definitely better, but still fairly middling. Superiority gets an A because the spell does a few very strong things and it does them well. but uniqueness and price get Ds because there are other cheaper ways to get the invisible effect, or some other effect that can do what invisible does. Other gets a C. This section is just to give a little credit for its out of combat utility. I don't love using spell slots for many things out of combat, but I have learned that some of my viewers do, and if you're one of those viewers, this spell could come in handy for you. You can use it to explore pretty handily, and it does have some good out of combat uses. Overall, I think I'm going to give Invisibility a high C. This effect is really strong when you get it for free or for cheap, like from a Dwergar or potions, but it's pretty underwhelming for me to be cast as a spell. Let's jump over now to C Invisibility. C Invisibility. Become able to see invisible creatures and possibly reveal them to others. This costs an action and a spell slot, and it lasts for the whole day. There is a dex save associated with the revealing, but that doesn't really matter because all you need is for your character to be able to see them. It gives the invisibility sight with a range of 30 feet, and you can cast it on yourself. There is no upcasting benefit. This is learned by sorcerers, bards, wizards, arcane tricksters, and eldritch knights. The ability to see invisible creatures is very useful in a handful of combats. Dwergar will sometimes use invisibility, Auntie Ethel will, the Ballast will, the ghosts at the Janeth estate are known nuisances, and the shadows in Act 2 are often invisible. Being able to nullify these enemies' invisibility is really strong in these fights. The issue with this spell, though, is one that we've seen before. The effect is not bad, but it's niche, and it's available for less than a spell slot. In fact, it's available as a permanent buff for just a role-playing cost from Volo. This is probably the most well-known permanent buff, but in case you're unaware, if you save Volo from the Goblin Camp, he will gore one of your eyes out in gratitude and replace it with an eye that can see invisibility. You can do this on any one party member, so it doesn't need to be your character. It can be one of your companions that you're making your marshal, or maybe someone you don't like and you want them to lose an eye. Along with Volo, if you use elixirs, there is an elixir of see invisibility for you to use, or you can just use a scroll. If you don't want to make use of any of these for role-playing or challenge reasons, there are still a few alternatives. Fairy Fire hits a large group of enemies and prevents them from going invisible, and will give you advantage on all your attacks. And Create Water, or any type of applying the wet condition, will get rid of invisibility as well, because wet creatures can't turn invisible. If none of these other ways tickle your fancy, then this spell might be for you to get the ability to see invisible creatures. Nicely, it is a day-long non-concentration buff, so you can just cast it and forget it, and there's really no work needed. The ratings, though, are going to reflect that the effect can be gained permanently for no actual cost. I've given it an F for base level early game. There are just no encounters where it's even useful until late Act 1 when you would fight Auntie Ethel. So it's an F at the early game, but it's a D for mid to late. That's when the encounters where this is useful actually show up. Superiority and uniqueness both get Fs as well. See Invisibility is an effect that you shouldn't need to use a spell slot on, and this is how I account for that in the ratings. Specificity and price get a B because even though you should get it from other places, the effect is strong in theory and it's useful for some specific encounters. It is a non-concentration all-day buff, so that goes into the price. Overall, though, this spell, it is going to be getting a high F. I've never cast this spell, even when I've made the choice not to use Volo's Eye, because using a spell slot on this is hard to justify when there are many other ways to see invisible creatures. I don't really need to use my spell slot and one of my prepared or learned spells on this. Let's now jump over to the tier list to put these spells in. I think See Invisibility is going to be near the top of F tier. I think the spell's effect is good, and it's good for some encounters. The spell is just the worst way to get that effect. The F tier spells below it, in my mind, are kind of just bad effects overall, whether or not they're the best way to get it. See, Invisibility does have some use in the effect itself. Invisibility will be right at the top of C tier. Although I don't love this spell, I need to give it credit for the strength of the condition it gives you. There are other sources that are easy to use, but it can still be worth the spell slot sometimes, so it's going to be going into the top of C tier. That's all I've got prepped for today. I hope you all enjoyed. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Do you use Invisibility way more than me? Or see Invisibility at all? And yeah, I hope you guys have a good one. Thanks.